Good morning, everyone, y buenos días a todos. Welcome to the worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Monterey Peninsula. My name is Lauren Keenan, and I'm currently serving as our church program council moderator, and as such, I'm also a member of the church's board of trustees. And it's so exciting to do announcements in person, not have to record. Anyway. We are a congregation of people of different ages, races, classes, religious and sexual orientations, gender identities, and political views. Our purpose is to change our own lives, even as we work to change the world around us through love, learning, and service to others. We acknowledge and honor that we gather on land sacred to the Ohlone, Costanoan, Esselen, Munson, Rumsen, Mutsun and Salinan, Indigenous peoples and First Nations. If you are a Zoom visitor with us today, please fill out our virtual visitor card. You can find the link in the Zoom chat box or on the church's website. If you are visiting in person at the church today, visitor cards are available in the Welcome Hall. Our worship theme for this month is Awakening. Today's service is entitled Aha Moments, Our Unexpected Awakenings, and is led by Reverend Axel Gehrman and worship associate Sue Ellen Stringer. Please remember to check out the weekly e-news on the church website or in your email. The latest e-news, dated Wednesday, March 30th, contains information about upcoming meetings and events and all the religious exploration activities for the week. You can subscribe to the e-news on our website or by contacting the office staff. Please see this week's newsletter for important information about 2 new book discussion groups beginning in April. Reverend Elaine will lead a discussion of the book Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation by Paul Hawken. Reverend Axel's group will discuss the book The Myth of Closure, Ambiguous Loss in a Time of Pandemic and Change. Check out additional information about these engaging and timely books in our newsletter for this week. For those attending our service in person today, please remember to keep your mouth and nose covered by your mask, and hopefully your mask fits well. And please observe social distancing and be attentive to the distancing preference stickers that we will wear while we're inside the building. If you receive a positive test for COVID-19 within the next week, please notify the church office so we can inform the other attendees that they may wish to be tested. We will ensure your report remains anonymous. Lastly, please help with our live streaming of this service to remote attendees by disabling your smartphone's Wi-Fi service. Our shared offering recipient for April is the RhodaCare Monterey Clinic in Seaside, which offers free medical care to uninsured residents of our community. Checks made out to UUCMP with RhodaCare in the memo line will benefit this worthy cause. And now we'll have a video presentation with other information about RhodaCare so we can all learn about it. Thank you and welcome. Have a wonderful service today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rita Moreno, and let's talk about RhodaCare Bay Area. Chances are you know about RhodaCare and its extraordinary work among those who have no health care. It's possible you have even supported one of the clinics, like I have. There are 10, dispensing help and hope to those who lack even to basic care. Well, thanks to the medical professionals who selflessly donate their time and skills, along with community volunteers and financial supporters like us, RhodaCare Bay Area continues to serve those at the margins. COVID has tragically affected the delivery of health care across the entire country, and RhodaCare has not been immune. But like the little engine that could, RhodaCare Bay Area keeps leaning forward, serving the most vulnerable. When in-clinic visits weren't possible, the medical providers provided telemedicine so that they could keep listening, prescribing, counseling, teaching, and encouraging. So it would be easy to sit here, at home with our masks on, only worrying about ourselves. Well, I'm no doctor, but that cannot be good for you. I can, however, write a prescription in the form of a check to RhodaCare Bay Area, and I'm telling you, it's an elixir for a healthy soul. RhodaCare Bay Area needs our financial contributions, so please say we can count on your help. Please Google RhodaCare Bay Area and click donate. Mwah. Thank you.
My name is Felipe Mutadamas Hernandez. I've been a patient of RhodaCare for the last 5 years. I am a type 2 diabetic patient. RhodaCare Clinic has always been helpful for my care. They have referred me to nutritionists for better eating, exercise, and all the care I need. Dr. Thompson and Claudia have been so helpful. Every time I have a question, they always have the right answer. And I'm so grateful with all the care they provide for all the patients. And Claudia and Dr. Thompson are really angels on earth. They always help everybody. And I want to thank RhodaCare for all they have done for me and the rest of the patients at the clinic and the whole community. They've been really great about helping everybody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Greg Thompson, Medical Director of the RhodaCare Monterey Free Clinic, where I started volunteering in 2011 when I first saw the great work being done there to care for the uninsured and underserved members of our local communities. In the past 10 years, and even through the recent pandemic, we've continued to expand our services. But there are two things for which our need will always be great: generous donations and volunteers who are willing to give of their time. We're always looking especially for compassionate medical providers, nurses, Spanish-speaking interpreters, and general support staff. So if you are someone, or if you know someone, who's looking for a way to give back to our wonderful community, please contact us to learn how you can help. Thank you.
And now we invite those of you on Zoom to switch to gallery view, and those of you in the sanctuary to turn to the people around you, and let's greet our neighbors. Our call to worship this morning is by Kim Beach. Everything begins on the verge of awareness. The dawn is not and then is. Sleep is and then is not. In between is awakening. The passage of thin light between breaks open the day. The passage of thin sound between flows into the day. Too soon the numbing rumble of traffic swells, the day glares. Let us wait upon the narrow moment, the first awareness of being in between. Let us live days and seasons on the thin edge of dawn in praise that every single thing begins now. Let us awaken to this moment. Let us worship. And now I invite you today to rise in body or spirit and join Camille in singing with your masks on our gathering song, Wake Now My Senses.
For real.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being it all. Keep with the web of creation your vow.
And now, with Unitarian Universalists around the world, we light our chalice, a symbol of our faith and our covenanted aspirations of love, hope, and justice. I will begin, and then please join in the response as Kayla lights our flame. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing both light and warmth to the world. Thank you, Kayla. And now, please enjoy this morning's story for all ages. Our story today is called Have You Ever Seen a Flower by Sean Harris. And this is how the story goes. Have you ever seen a flower? I mean, really seen a flower? I mean, way down in the clover with your face down in a flower? Have you ever seen a flower using nothing but your nose? Breathe deep. What do you see? Raindrops made of honey? The knees of bumblebees? A fancy lady? Dancing babies at the Royal Jelly Jubilee? Have you ever seen a flower so deep you had to shout, "Hello!" and listen for an echo just to know how deep it goes? And did you wonder if you wandered down between its golden columns and into its corridors, who you might meet? Maybe a tiny queen. Have you ever felt a flower? Do a flower petal's veins feel like the veins beneath your skin? Have you ever pricked your finger or fallen on your knee and seen the brilliant color of your life? Life is inside you. Life is all around you. Now put your hands on your belly and say, "This is my stem." And now sip a drip of water and stand very still. Feel it slip and trickle all the way down to your roots. Do you feel yourself growing? Do you feel yourself stretching toward the sun, ready to burst and bloom? Have you ever been a flower? I mean, really been a flower? And if you were, would you remember? Try and see. The end. And now I invite the children and youth to head off to their classes.
Aha moments. Sue Ellen Stringer. In July 2021, my caregiver rushed me to Salinas Memorial Hospital because my intuition told me there was something seriously wrong. My kidneys were failing and I had to have dialysis. At first, I didn't know what that meant. My sister, who's a nurse, explained it to me. I had to be hooked up to a machine where they clean my blood, and it took 4 hours because the purpose of the kidneys is to clean the toxins from your blood. I had dialysis in the hospital a few times before I left, the doctor came in and said that I had to have dialysis 3 times a week, every other day for the rest of my life. That was my aha moment, my awakening. At first I cried and cried. It was such a shock. Then I realized it was a process that would help me live. I wanted to live to see my grandson and all the things I loved about life. I know I'm a resilient woman, a strong woman. You have heard my stories about recovering from mental health challenges, and now this was another challenge that took me time to accept. As with other challenges in my life, there were also blessings in disguise. I have come to appreciate my son and his wife, my grandson and my step-granddaughter, my sister and brother, and all the love I feel from my friends and this beloved community in this congregation. My sister decided that I couldn't live alone in my own apartment. I had to live in assisted living. So I live in Del Monte Gardens, assisted living and memory care in Pacific Grove. I had to downsize my possessions, which was a blessing. I had too much stuff. I appreciate the lovely murals here in the gardens. To quote Tara Brach, author of Radical Acceptance, Embracing Life with the Heart of a Buddha, we practice radical acceptance by pausing and then meeting whatever is happening inside us with this kind of unconditional friendliness. One of my favorite poems by Rumi is, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." So now I'm grateful for my aha moment of having to have dialysis for the rest of my life. It's part of my real life, filled with much joy.
And now please rise in body or spirit and join in singing "How Could Anyone?" And Carol Collin will lead us, and Paige will lead us too. Yay!
How could
This now is the time we set aside each week to take a breath and pause for a moment and think about what's been happening in our lives these past few days and what's been going on in the lives of the people we know and care about, the people we love, close by or far away. We also think about what's going on in the world, countries far away, loved ones threatened by war and violence. We hold all these things in our hearts. Our Caring Network has one joy for us this morning, a joy for James Ricker, who will be turning 13 this month. We each bring our own joys and sorrows here on Sunday mornings, which are on our minds and in our hearts. I'd like to now invite any of you so moved to drop a pebble representing your individual joys and concerns into our shared waters of love and support. And please be mindful of physical distancing as you do so. If you're joining us via Zoom, you can also write a joy or concern in the chat. And of course, you can also contact the co-ministers or the Caring Network privately. Our meditation this morning is by my colleague, Reverend Dr. Monica Cummings. It's a piece entitled, "Let It Be Done." After this meditation, we'll have a period of silence. Please join me now in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Dear unknown, unknowable, yet known by many names, keep us mindful that we are all related, and that when one of us is ignored or treated with dis-ease, we all suffer. Today, let each of us commit to welcome the stranger. Let us move beyond our comfort zones and connect with people labeled different and pushed to the edges of society. We can make a difference. We can transform lives. We can bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live, where we work, where we play. Let us keep our hearts and minds open and receptive to the still small voice that calls us to stand witness for those who cannot stand, to speak the truth for justice for those without a voice, and to lead the way on the journey toward wholeness for those without sight. In the spirit of love, compassion, and community, let this be done. Blessed be. And this now is the time for our morning offering. We encourage you to think about your financial support for this church and the resources the church needs to do our good work. We encourage those of you at home to write a check and drop it in the mail, or use the donate button on our church website. Those of you here in church can drop something in the collection baskets at the exits after the service. We also invite you to contribute to our shared offering recipient this month, Rotacare Monterey. And now please enjoy our offertory music.
Our first reading is by Helen Keller from her book, Light in My Darkness. This from the first chapter entitled Awakenings. She writes, "For nearly 6 years, I had no concepts of whatever of nature or mind or death or God. I really thought with my body. Without a single exception, my memories of that time are tactile. I know I was impelled like an animal to seek food and warmth. I remember crying, but not the grief that caused the tears. I kicked, and because I recall it physically, I know I was angry. I imitated those about me when I made signs for things I wanted to eat or help find eggs in my mother's farmyard. But there was not one spark of emotion or rational thought in these distinct memories. I was an unconscious clod of earth. There was nothing in me except the instinct to eat and drink and sleep. My days were blank, without past, present, or future, without hope or anticipation, without interest or joy. Then suddenly, I knew not how or when or where, my brain felt the impact of another mind, and I woke to language, to knowledge, to love, to the usual concepts of nature, good and evil. I awoke, and I was actually lifted from nothingness to the human life.
Our second and final reading this morning is by the neuroscientist and philosopher Sam Harris. It's from his book, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion. He writes, "Our minds are all we have. They are all we have ever had. And they are all we can offer others." This might not be obvious, especially when there are aspects of your life that seem in need of improvement, when your goals are unrealized, or you're struggling to find a career, or you have a relationship that needs repairing. But it's the truth. Every experience you have ever had has been shaped by your mind. Every relationship is as good or bad as it is because of the mind involved. If you are perpetually angry, depressed, confused, unloving, or your attention is elsewhere, it won't matter how successful you become or who's in your life, you won't enjoy any of it. Most of us could easily compile a list of goals we want to achieve or personal problems that need to be solved. But what is the real significance of every item on this list? Everything we want to accomplish, to paint the house, learn a new language, find a better job, everything is something that promises that, if done, it would allow us to finally relax and enjoy our lives in the present. Generally speaking, this is a false hope. Now, I'm not denying the importance of achieving one's goals and maintaining one's health or keeping one's children clothed and fed. But most of us spend our time seeking happiness and security without acknowledging the underlying purpose of our search. Each of us is looking for a path back to the present. We are trying to wake up now. I don't know whether you caught what day yesterday was. Anybody? Anybody? April 2nd, that's a good one. It's true, but what I was thinking of was that it was the first day of Ramadan. And I'm reminded that Muslims around the world are now observing this holy month by fasting, not eating or drinking anything from sunrise to sunset every day. Millions of Muslims, almost a quarter of the world's population, are devoting more time to prayer and acts of charity this month, striving to improve their conduct, inspired by ancient teachings that say, when Ramadan arrives, the gates of paradise are opened, and the gates of hell are locked up, and devils are put in chains. Observing Ramadan is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. I'm reminded that the reason Muslims honor this particular month is because it's during Ramadan that the Prophet Muhammad received his first divine revelation, his moment of profound spiritual awakening. Ramadan reminds us of how Muhammad joined a long list of prophets throughout religious history who received revelations from God. You know, there was Moses, who was tending sheep on Mount Horeb when he heard the voice of God from a burning bush. And there was Elijah, who hid in a cave on that same mountain when he heard the voice of God, not in a burning bush, nor in the powerful storm that raged outside, nor in the earthquake that shook the ground beneath his feet, but rather he heard God in the gentle whisper in silence, the still small voice. And the Apostle Paul, you recall, was on his way to Damascus when a light from heaven flashed all around him. He fell to the ground and heard God's voice charging him to change his ways. When Paul opened his eyes, he could not see a thing. He was blind for 3 days. Now, Muhammad's revelation was in some ways similar, but also unique. As the story goes, it was during the 17th night of the month in the year 610. Muhammad was sleeping in a cave on Mount Hira near Mecca when he was suddenly torn from sleep and awakened to a frightening divine presence. An angel appeared and commanded him to recite. But Muhammad refused, saying, I can't recite. I'm no prophet. So the angel wrapped him in an overpowering embrace. Muhammad felt as if all the breath was being squeezed from his body. And just when he felt he could bear it no longer, the angel released him and again commanded him, recite. And again, Muhammad refused. And again, the angel embraced him until he felt he'd reached the limits of his endurance. And finally, at the end of the 3rd terrifying embrace, Muhammad found the first words of a new scripture pouring from his mouth. And with that, the word of God was spoken for the first time in the Arabic language. The words were later written down and would ultimately become the Quran, which means the recitation. The religious scholar Karen Armstrong writes, unlike the Torah, the Jewish scripture, which was revealed to Moses in one session on Mount Sinai, the Quran was revealed to Muhammad bit by bit, line by line, and verse by verse, over a period of 23 years. And every revelation was a painful experience. Never once did I receive a revelation without feeling that my soul was being torn away from me, Muhammad said. Religious traditions describe awakenings as divine revelations, dramatic moments when we encounter God, the voice of God, the light of God, the angel of God. These are the words and images used to describe moments that transcend our everyday experience. But awakenings don't always open our eyes and ears to a supernatural God, but rather they open our minds to the world around us. In our first reading, which Sue Ellen read, Helen Keller describes her own experience of revelation, of awakening. She was 6 years old when her teacher, Anne Sullivan, after several weeks and many frustrating failed attempts to communicate, held Helen's hand under the water pump, and water poured out, and she emphatically pressed the letters signs into Helen's hand, spelling W-A-T-E-R. Writing about this experience many years later, Helen Keller recalls, it was a wonderful day, never to be forgotten. Now I see it was my mental awakening. I think it was an experience somewhat in the nature of revelation, she said. And she continues, that first revelation was worth all those years I had spent in dark, soundless imprisonment. The word water dropped into my mind like the sun in a frozen winter world. Revelations can take many different forms. Sue Ellen shared a powerful experience of awakening when she realized her kidneys were failing and that she'd need to receive dialysis treatments for the rest of her life. After surprise and sadness passed, she discovered a deeper awareness of her life's many blessings, her own resilience, an abundance of love, and a life filled with much joy. Now, the neuropsychologist Charlotte Tomeno offers an interesting perspective on awakening. In her book, Awakening the Brain, the neuropsychology of grace. Tomeno was drawn to the study of neuroscience because her own older sister suffered a serious brain injury. Her sister's situation deeply affected the whole family. And so in her work treating patients suffering and recovering from trauma, Tomeno gained profound insights that are significant not only for people who've suffered serious brain injuries, but for all of us. Regardless of our circumstances, regardless of age or ability, we can all benefit from a better understanding of how our brain works and how we can help our brain function at its best. She calls this awakening the brain. So what does being awake look like? Charlotte Tomeno describes it like this. She says, just as when we awaken from sleep in the morning and open our eyes to the physical world around us, our consciousness moves out of the reality of slumber and dreams. In just the same way, the brain can awaken from one level of consciousness to another. The more aware you are of the thoughts, emotions, sensations, and actions that are part of your experience, the more awake and better able you are to choose your direction. It's that simple, she says. So for instance, she says, as a child grows in experience, she learns to pick herself up after a fall, dust herself off, and pronounce herself, okay. Once a parent has soothed the pain, slowed the tears, and returned her from the shock and fear. The child's own observing inner self can wake her from that same experience the next time, without a parent. In that way, she can move through the inner world of thought, emotion, and physical sensation to choose a better feeling perspective. There are endless versions of this skinned knee scenario throughout childhood, Tomeno says. We've all experienced missing the most important party of the school year because of a family event, or dealing with a pimple, or getting over being seen with a bad haircut. As adults, we look back and we chuckle at how little our worlds seemed to be, and how it seemed they were coming to an end as a child. The power of our disappointment, loss, and embarrassment was so great, but with time, we've woken up to a bigger perspective of life. Now, those childhood emotions which consumed us at the time have faded into a funny story that, in hindsight, lets us laugh at ourselves, Charlotte Tomeno writes. Have you ever had aha moments, moments of sudden awakening? One aha moment I remember in my life is when our first child, Noah, was born. That was 28 years ago, a snowy January in upstate New York. Elaine and I were increasingly anxious during her pregnancy because the year before, Elaine had suffered a late miscarriage, and we were afraid that this could happen this time. We didn't know what would happen. I remember the day her water broke. We rushed to the hospital, which was just down the street, and tried to do all the things our midwife coach had taught us, walking the halls on the maternity ward together, taking deep breaths. I remember witnessing the labor of childbirth was frightening and humbling. As I stood there holding Elaine's hand, I can't imagine what it was like for her. And as it turned out, it was an unusually prolonged and complicated delivery. Elaine was in labor for 19 hours. The physical and emotional intensity of those hours is hard to express. And then finally, with the help of a trusted doctor with the skilled use of vacuum traction, a suction cup affixed to the baby's head, our son was born. 9 pounds and 7 ounces, a big baby. His head was banged up and badly bruised, and he spent his first few days in the neonatal intensive care unit, but he soon stabilized and was in good health. To this day, there are few experiences in my life that compare to the moment of Noah's birth, to witness the miracle of new life. I know it's one of the most normal, natural things in the world. 10,000s of babies are born every day. It's the most basic and universal fact of life. But witnessing it blew my mind. And to this day, the mystery and the meaning of it boggles my mind. And I'm filled with an almost overwhelming sense of awe and a breathtaking sense of love that makes my heart ache. It leaves me feeling profoundly connected to all life and all living things. It leaves me feeling strangely and surprisingly awakened to the whole world. Any number of experiences can awaken us. Almost anything can trigger an awakening. It can be something as simple as the sight of a flower. It often begins with a moment of surprise. Something happens that stops us short, and we don't know exactly why. But we don't immediately wake up. It does not happen in a flash. Awakening is rather a slow process of opening our minds to the full meaning of what we've experienced. It's a journey we choose to embark on, an ongoing process. For Muhammad, God's revelations continued for 23 years. For Helen Keller, it was a lifelong process. Her first awakening was at the water pump with her teacher. This was the aha moment of Helen Keller's life, most often retold. But this moment was not actually her awakening. It was only the beginning. In the years that followed, Helen Keller grew up and matured. She learned to read and speak, amazing accomplishments for sure, but she also became an activist and an advocate for people with disabilities. She had a political awakening and became an outspoken pacifist and radical socialist. She was a fervent supporter of women's suffrage and reproductive rights. She supported the NAACP and helped found the American Civil Liberties Union. And she deeply resented that her publishers were intent on reducing her life to a happy, uplifting story of resilience in the face of adversity, a story designed to make non-disabled people feel comfortable and confident in the powers of the plucky individual to overcome any obstacle. There was so much more to Helen Keller's life than learning to cope with being deaf and blind. In her book, The World I Live In, which was published when she was 28, Keller laments that publishers were only interested in her autobiographical stories, but not the pressing social issues she desperately wanted to address. In exasperation, she writes, "Apparently no one cares what I think." Our awakening is a choice. It means choosing to open our minds to the implications of what was briefly revealed to us, a flash of insight, a burst of understanding. In hindsight, it can sometimes seem as if our revelation was nothing but a dream, a figment of our imagination, a flight of fancy, and we may choose to put it aside, dismiss it as a trivial fluke, and forget about it. Sometimes, even after earth-shaking revelations, we simply go back to sleep. We continue down the road of life in blissful ignorance, asleep at the wheel. But we always have a choice. We can choose to change our minds. Ultimately, our minds are all we have. They're all we ever had, Sam Harris says. We can choose to seize the moment. We can choose to open our minds and open our hearts to the amazing wonders of the real world. We can choose to move beyond our comfort zones. We can choose to welcome the stranger. We can choose to bring harmony and healing to the places and spaces where we live. We can choose to make a difference. May we see that the world we dream of is not a figment of our imagination, but a reality. There is a world of beauty and wonder present all around us. There is a world of love and justice within our reach. waiting to be fully revealed. May we do our part to wake up to this world. So be it. Amen. And now, please rise in body or spirit and join Carol in singing "We Laugh, We Cry."
It's in here
Hymnals,
somewhere,
huh? 354.
because I can't see what's behind me.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we mix our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel our freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need those friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the ways of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found our joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, even to question truly is an answer.
And now please join in the unison words as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but take its light into our lives. Of our children. And now, please imagine taking someone's hand for our benediction. May we tread softly, speak truthfully, love gently, breathe deeply, live wisely and awake, and go in peace. Amen. And now please enjoy our wonderful postlude. Oh, yeah. Our worship service is over, but we invite you to stick around and socialize for a while. Those of you here in the sanctuary are encouraged to leave the building and meet outside where you can take off your mask and see everyone smile. Those of you on Zoom can join a breakout room where you can turn on your mics and chat with a few other folks. Please stick around for a few moments as we set up the breakout rooms. Everyone, have a wonderful Sunday.